Yeah, so we will go ahead and get started. So good evening, everyone. I'm not sure, I just wanna make sure folks can hear me. If you put in the chat a thumbs up, you say yes. Just making sure everyone is able to hear us before we get started. Awesome. Thank you for confirming, Christine. So my name is Joanne Antoine. I'm Executive Director of Common Cause Maryland, and I'm going to be one of the many speakers that you hear from this evening. I want to thank you all for, just taking time out of your busy days to prioritize our democracy and making sure that you're able to exercise your right to vote by Election Day. If we could go to the next slide. Now I know, again, Danielle is gonna, this previous slide, please, I'm so sorry. So for those who aren't familiar with Common Cause First, we are a nonpartisan watchdog organization that has been working in the state now for nearly 50 years to ensure that our democracy is working for all of us, that our elected and appointed officials are working on behalf of the public's interest, and that you all are able to have your voices heard in the political process. And that means being able to exercise your right to vote. Now in 2017, our organization and a number of others who are on the line today came together to form a coalition called Everyone Votes Maryland. And this coalition is made up of local, state, national grassroots groups and grass-top leaders who are all invested in ensuring that every eligible Marylander is able to vote on Election Day. Together, we've passed reforms like same-day registration and automatic voter registration. And obviously, during this crisis, we've come together again to ensure that you all are able to safely vote on Election Day. Now, I just kind of want to pause because I know that a lot of you right now just are feeling scared, right? It's a scary time. This public health crisis is one unlike any that I know I've seen in my time, right? But as concerned as we are about our health and the health of our family members, we also need to continue to be concerned about the health of our democracy. We know that the elections that are coming up this June and in November are going to be critical, not just in regards to our everyday lives, but in regards to our response to COVID-19. So tonight, our goal is to ensure that you all know how to safely vote leading up to June 2nd. Next slide, please. And again, our goals, right? Making sure that you know how to safely vote, making sure that you know where to go with your questions. And we know that there are a lot of them. So feel free even right now to start dropping questions in the chat. We're gonna address them towards the end of the webinar, but we will also answer questions in the chat as well. But outside of the webinar, we wanna make sure you know how to contact the local Board of Elections, and when they're not able to assist you, that you know where to go for nonpartisan voter protection support. And obviously, our main goal is to make sure that you all are able to leave here confident, right? That you all have the tools and information you need to vote on Election Day or before Election Day, and that you all are able to help with outreach efforts. We know that with so many changes happening so rapidly, that a lot of voters are being left behind. They may not realize that the election date has changed. They might not know that their ballot is on the way or in their mailbox right now. So this is a way that you can join our efforts by helping us get out the vote to every single Marylander. And last slide, please. Next slide. Sorry. And just some quick facts. We like to do the quick facts because we know that using technology, sometimes people lose connection or you have to hop off early. So we wanted to make sure we flag some of these things early on, right? I'm sure at this point you all know that Election Day has been moved. It is on June 2nd. Every active registered voter will be automatically mailed a ballot. I think a survey question is gonna come up since we want to get a sense of who has received their ballot already. But again, certain jurisdictions are just beginning to mail them out. We'll give you information you need on how to track it. When you receive the ballot by mail, if you're able to vote by mail, that ballot will come with prepaid a return envelope, meaning you don't have to worry about placing stamps regardless of how long your ballot is. And again, your ballot will be accepted, counted, if it is postmarked by June 2nd. So if you get it today, you can mail it tomorrow. But again, if you have to wait until last minute, June 2nd, 8 p.m. is the cutoff. You know, we're going to go into why this process is safe and secure, debunk a lot of the myths that you've been hearing already, and make sure that you know that if you need to vote in person, that there are options available for you. So I will pause there and pass it on to my colleague, Kristen Harbeson at the League of Conservation Voters.
Hello, everybody, and thank you again for taking your time to join us. I'm Kristen Harbeson again from the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. We are a statewide advocacy organization working to pass strong environmental legislation and hold our elected officials accountable. And we believe very strongly that elections are an environmental concern, that we can't get that kind of good environmental legislation if we don't have the full participation of everybody at the voting booth. So there are three, next slide. There are three ways that you can vote in this election, but first there's also some things that you should know, that there are several things that have not changed about this election. And that includes who can vote. Any US citizen who is 18 years old by the time of the primary election and is registered can vote. You can vote in a party primary election, although we do still have closed primaries, so you will get the ballot for the party with which you registered. You can change political parties for the deadline, and that deadline is May 27th. But you don't have to affiliate with a political party So some things have not changed. What has changed is where you can vote and the ways that you can vote. And there are three ways you can vote this election. The best version is vote by mail. It is the safest in terms of social distancing, and there will also be drop boxes throughout the counties, throughout the state, and also there will be in-person vote centers. So the best version is vote by mail. All active registered voters will receive a ballot, as Joanne said. If you haven't gotten your ballot, you can check your status by going to the Board of Elections website. You can also request your ballot to be sent to you electronically. If you do get your ballot sent electronically, you'll have to print it out and mail it, and you will need to include postage for that. But if you use the ballot that is sent to you, you do not have to add postage. It is postage prepaid. Just be sure that you use a black pen to complete the ballot, that you sign and date the ballot, and then mail it back before June 2nd. The second way is the drop box, the secure drop box, which is will be throughout the state. Large jurisdictions will have as many as 4 drop box, but all jurisdictions will have between 1 and 4. Drop boxes will begin being available on May 21st, but they will be available up through June 2nd. Most drop boxes don't require you leave the car. You can just drive up, drop it in the slot, and let it go. Ballots need to be sealed and signed again with a black pen. And if you're using a drop box, you need to have it in before 8 p.m. on June 2nd. And then the third way is the way that we're most familiar with, which is going to vote centers. And those are available, will be open on June 2nd only, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. throughout the day. Each county will have between 1 and 4 in-person voting centers available for voters not voting by mail. So if you need additional assistance, or if for some reason you didn't receive a ballot, you can vote in person. Same-day registration will be available, but it may require you to fill out a provisional ballot. There will be ballot marking devices for people who need assistance. And voters going to these locations must wear masks. These centers will maintain strict social distancing and sanitation protocols so that we can make sure that our elections are safe and secure, and that we're not increasing the risk of coronavirus throughout the state as we're starting to see our numbers decrease. So, and with that, those are the three major ways. Some things have changed, many things have not. And then to go into more information, we have some important dates here, including the two important ones are May 27th and June 2nd. May 27th is the last date to register to vote or to change your party affiliation. And June 2nd is, as we've said a couple times, the primary. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Tasmin Swanson from Baltimore Votes, and she will continue the presentation.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I wanted to point out very quickly on this slide at the bottom, it says elections.maryland.gov. This is the official State Board of Elections website. And on this site, there's a button that says track your ballot. So you can go there and you can see exactly where your ballot is right now, if it's in the mail, if it's reached your house, and if you've returned it, has it been received by the Board of Elections? So this is a great resource. So I'm from Baltimore Votes, and we work on making sure that every person in every precinct in the city of Baltimore is able to vote in every election. That's our basic mission. So I'm going to talk very quickly just about voting by mail in general. This is something that's new for a lot of us here in Maryland, but vote by mail or vote at home has been done safely, securely across the country for many years. In fact, 33 states, including Maryland, already allow any eligible voter to request an absentee ballot or vote by mail without needing to provide a reason. So if you can see from this picture here, all of the states that are in blue or that are in dark gray already have extensive vote by mail options. What is different this year, of course, is the scale, the scope. Every active voter is being mailed a ballot here in Maryland, but we have done this before. We have voted by mail before. We know that it's safe. We're just scaling it up. And there are some also clear benefits of voting by mail. Election security is one thing. There is a paper record of every vote so that if we need to do a recount, if there are contested ballots or a contested race, it's really easy to do. Another big benefit of voting by mail is that there are very few instances of fraud. Oregon was the first state to move to an entirely vote at home, vote by mail system. They did that in 2000. So over 20 years, they have had over 100 million ballots that have been cast by mail in Oregon. And they've had about 12 instances of fraud during that entire 20-year period. So I know a lot of people have concerns about, is this safe? Aren't people just going to, make up their ballots and vote for strangers or dead people or steal ballots? The answer is no. People take this seriously. In Maryland, there is a $5,000 fine, and you could potentially be put in jail if you commit election fraud. People take this seriously, and there are very few instances of fraud. And then the last big benefit of voting by mail is around voter education. You get your ballot at home, and then you have as much time as you'd like up until the deadline to sit with it and do your research, to go on to vote411.org, read about all of the candidates, and make sure that you're comfortable with your choices and are making the right decision for you. So that's great, instead of having to make a decision quickly in the booth. So with that, we're going to talk about what all of these changes mean for Maryland. So I'm going to pass it over to Ben Jackson, who's with Disabilities Rights Maryland, to talk more specifically about our local situation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Jackson. I'm a staff attorney at Disability Rights Maryland. And for those who are unfamiliar with Disability Rights Maryland is the protection advocacy organization for Maryland. There's one of these organizations in all 50 states and territories. And what we are is we're tasked with reducing barriers to legal barriers for individuals with disabilities. So as far as voting, we're specifically designated through the Helping Americans Vote Act to reduce barriers for individuals with disabilities from registering to vote through casting the ballot, the entire process. To that end, we have a voting rights hotline. The information is here. It will be staffed by me on election day the entire time. The polling places are open, but do feel free to either call or email before then if you're having difficulties requesting accessible ballot, or if you have any questions about voting accessibly in Maryland. And we're also available to do voting rights presentations or voter registration, even under these pandemic conditions where have modified so we don't do in-person activities. Now, as far as in this election, you have 3 different options. You can request your ballot electronically, you can request a large print ballot, or you can vote in person. And as the previous presenters have discussed, definitely we want to encourage people to, if they have the means, to vote at home. And so the vote at home option is the electronic ballot delivery. You'll have to request that through your state or local board of elections. The date to request it is May 29th, so you have to have the request in by May 29th. You'll receive an email, you'll click on the link, you'll get a password, you'll enter the password, you'll download a ballot. The ballot should be accessible. You'll have to mark it electronically using whatever screen reader technology that you have. And then the difficult part may be printing it out. So if you have a printer, great. But if you have difficulty printing, you know, if you know of somebody who has printer capabilities, great, you know, lean on someone for that technology. But if you don't have an accessible way to mark your ballot, then all counties will have in-person voting. It's going to vary the number of locations based on the county. And these locations are going to be different than your early voting locations, but all the locations should be publicized on the State Board of Elections, and the electronic ballot marking device should be available. If you have questions or problems on election day, if there's an issue with the electronic machine or the scanner, do feel free to give me a call to our voter rights hotline, and I'll try to work through whatever difficulties you're facing with the state or local board of elections. So that's, you know, those are the 3 options that we have as far as accessibly voting under the complete vote by mail system. If you have any other questions, do feel free to drop them in the chat or follow up with me offline. Next, we're going to hear from Yahidi from CASA.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Yahidi Mora, and I am the Civic Engagement and Elections Director at CASA. We are the largest immigrant rights and Latino organization with over 100,000 members, the majority Latino and West African. And we do, I'll say, we do, among the many services and programs that we have, we do voter registration drives and get out the vote efforts. And also we have a citizen program in which we help eligible immigrants become U.S. citizens and be part of the fabric and become civically engaged in this country. And I'll say one thing: like most immigrants who become naturalized U.S. citizens, I too was very confused about the process of being a voter in the U.S. from registering to vote, which I'll say that in my country, like many other Latin American and many other countries in the world, the additional step of registering to vote is not necessary. It does not exist to cast a ballot. So my first time ever voting was in the US, and it was in 2008. And if it wasn't for people who at that moment guided me through this process, I would say that I would have missed the opportunity to vote and vote in that historic election. And now, given our new reality, I can certainly understand how it can be overwhelming for new citizens to navigate all of these changes. But whether it is your first time voting or not, I do think that now it is truly a great time to be part of history, because this will be Maryland's first all-male election, right? And I think the key information that I would love for you to take away today that I would like to offer are the resources in language assistance that's available to all immigrants. So I'll say that in the federal law, section 203 of the Voter Rights Act, it requires that all materials related to voting and election day be prepared in both English and Spanish to allow citizens to effectively participate in the political process. And this determination is really based on census data, so obviously some counties and some places would be in more need of this than others. But what that means is that not only materials, but assistance from bilingual poll workers at these locations are available. Currently in Maryland, the counties covered under the federal law, the one that is fully covered is Montgomery County. They have all of their voter education materials available in Spanish. They also provide a Spanish ballot. So, Spanish speakers will probably are supposed to receive their ballot in Spanish, and they actively recruit bilingual poll workers as mandated by this law. And in the case of Prince George's County, we're almost there. And that's based on population, right? There have been huge demographic shifts and a lot of growth in the Latino community in Prince George's County, and they have started to include Spanish materials in their outreach. Now, if you do not live in any of these two counties, still primary election materials are available in Spanish. If you need assistance on a different language, these steps are: first, contact your local Board of Election office or one of the election protection lines that you see listed on the slide. You can also contact us at CASA, and we will help assist and find translation. Our hotline is listed in the previous slide, but it is 1-888-214-6016. And we will also send you this information. Please note that the ballots do allow for assistance. So obviously other members of your family, friends could assist you in filling out a ballot, and they will just have to sign as witness that they provided that assistance. At CASA, we will be having an all Spanish webinar in the next 2 weeks. We do not have a date yet, but please check our Facebook page at CASA for All for the announcement, as we will be posting it there. My request is that you vote this election, but that you help us spread the word. Obviously, again, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of folks, it's overwhelming and they might really not know of these changes. So please help us spread the word, and also encourage others in the Latino and immigrant community to become election judges, because as you heard from the language assistance that counties are supposed to provide, this guarantees that voters from all backgrounds can really get the assistance that they need if more of us are at the polls. I'll say that the League of Women Voters also has created a great, valuable resource, a Spanish voter guide. I think those resources that and other resources will be sent to you all attendees by email. And please share it. because that's the only way that we can really make sure that that we get full participation this primaries early for the general election. With that, now I'll pass it on to Marilyn Perk.
Hi, I'm Emily Starr. I'm the director of Maryland PIRG. We're a statewide public interest advocacy organization with a student-directed chapter at the University of Maryland College Park. We've been around for about 40 years working to help college students register and vote, among other issues that we work on. Young voters are the largest voting bloc in the country, but young people often want to intend to vote, but often struggle to navigate the process because they're new to the system. And having to have that extra step of often needing to update their registration every year as they move is one of the tough challenges they face. So as we're adjusting our systems to protect public health, young voters may face even more obstacles to participation. So there's a question up there for folks I'm hoping you can weigh in. If you are a college student or have a college student in your family, let us know. The good news is that young people who are registered to vote do turn out in high numbers, very close to the rate of older voters. But unfortunately, less of them are registered. So in 2018, for example, just over half of Marylanders aged 18 to 24 were registered to vote, compared to 2/3 of all Maryland voters over the age of 18. So the voter registration gap is really the driving force that is leading to lower participation among young voters. So like everyone, again, this year's election may be confusing, and we need to make sure that young people don't stumble with the new barriers. So I have 4 tips, things you can do if you're a college student or for college students in your life to help make sure they can participate on June 2nd. First, is to confirm your registration is up to date and help them request an absentee ballot if they need one, if they're not currently at the place where they're registered. Second, confirm that they received their ballot and help them follow up with their local Board of Elections if they did not get one in a timely manner. Again, that's the next week or so if they're already registered to vote, and it'll be much closer to Election Day if they haven't registered yet. Third, make sure we're reminding them that they need to drop off their ballot at a drop-off box or mail it in. As we've heard all over the news, young people might not have stamps or be used to using the mail, so help folks do that. And then again, if 1, 2, and 3 fail, you can help get young people to on election day to a vote center to both register and vote in person, or working with them to contact their local Board of Elections to get a digital ballot if they are registered and aren't able to make it to a vote center but didn't receive their mail-in ballot. A couple of key considerations, which I alluded to, for both in-state students and out-of-state students, they can register to vote with their campus address or their home address, regardless of where they will be on election day. Whichever address they use will determine what elections they can participate in. On June 2nd, for example, we have the presidential primary, but some Maryland municipalities also have local primary elections for city government, for school board, for the like. So if they are currently staying at the address where they are registered, they will need to, if they are currently not staying at the address where they are registered, they will need to either change their address to their new location or apply for an absentee ballot to be sent to their current place. So for example, if you're a Morgan State student who has an apartment in Baltimore City and is registered there but has gone home to Howard County because of the shelter in place, you'll need to ask for an absentee ballot or change your registration to Howard County. But in order to vote in the Baltimore City elections for city council and mayor, you'll need to keep your registration in Baltimore City and get an absentee ballot. We've been over the website elections.maryland.gov, which has all the information you need to do this. In order to register to vote or request an absentee ballot, you can do it all online as long as you have a Maryland State ID. If you don't have a Maryland State ID, if you're an out-of-state student, for example, you'll need to print out those materials and sign and mail them back in for your voter registration form or for an absentee ballot request. Again, the deadline to both register to vote or request an absentee ballot for the June 2nd primary is May 22nd. But if you miss the deadline, you are able to register and vote in person on June 2nd at a limited polling location. Don't do that if you don't have to, but it's there if you need one. Likewise, if you miss the deadline for an absentee ballot, by the 27th. You can contact the DOE for a digital ballot, but please don't do that if you can avoid it, because we don't want to overrun their systems. Just to wrap up, I'd say for everyone, having a bad experience voting, especially when it's your first time voting, can really turn people off in the system. So we want to do everything we can to ensure that people have a good experience voting, both young people and all demographics. So we're counting on folks to help get the word out to their peers and help people navigate this new system. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole from Out for Justice and Qiana for Life After Release to take it over. Thanks.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Nicole Hanson. I am the Executive Director of Out for Justice. We are a nonprofit organization that is led by formerly incarcerated women and men. And our focus is to educate, engage, and empower the reentry community as well as the currently incarcerated community on the legislative process. That process also includes our individuals' right to vote. Qiana, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Qiana Johnson. I am the Executive Director of Life After Release, a Prince George's County-based organization that is providing comprehensive reentry options for individuals who are returning home from jail or prison or at risk of going to jail or prison in Prince George's County, with a particular focus on Black women and girls. And we have been in the county advocating for individuals and showing them how to advocate for themselves and empowering individuals around the legislative process and also around their voting needs and rights.
And so Out for Justice engaged in 2015, but even before 2015, many individuals with felony convictions did not have the right to vote before 2015. But that did not stop us. We would use what we call the proxy vote and encourage our family members and friends to vote on our behalf. But then in 2015, we co-led the coalition to restore voting rights to over 40,000 individuals with felony convictions and those individuals on probation and parole. And so in 2015, Governor Hogan vetoed that very important critical piece of legislation, and then we came back the following legislative session and overrode that veto. What is important for individuals to know that currently to date, if you have been registered, let's say in 2015, you may need to re-register again to ensure that you are eligible. But for individuals who remember voting and let's say for Obama, then you are currently right now an eligible voter. Individuals who have felony convictions, no matter how many of those convictions you have, no matter if you're on probation or parole, in the state of Maryland, you are eligible to vote. Also, if you have a family member or loved one who is sitting in jail right now, pre-trial, not yet convicted of anything, they too are eligible to vote. And then lastly, individuals who are serving a sentence on a misdemeanor conviction, no matter how long they are serving, if they're serving right now and they're right now in prison, serving on a misdemeanor conviction, they too are eligible to vote. And so what we want to encourage the public is to make sure that the message is very clear that individuals with felonies can vote. We're encouraging them to register to vote. We're encouraging them to look out for their absentee ballots. And if they don't get their ballots by the specified date that was listed in the slides before, that you are to call your local board of elections and get access to and make sure that you are available to vote. If you have a loved one who is currently behind the walls, please help to facilitate their ballot. They may be registered to vote, but they may need your help in accessing their ballot. And so what you can do is that you could, one, become that absentee ballot designee. That means that you can go online, get the absentee ballot designee application, fill it out for them, or you can call the local board of elections, let the local board of elections know that your family member and friend is currently incarcerated, give the address to where they are, and their name and information, and the board of elections, no matter the county, should send your loved one in a absentee ballot. We are getting some support, I know, in Baltimore from our local board of elections jurisdiction. We've been in conversation with them, and they have indicated that if we could get the names of those eligible voters to them, that they would send those individuals in their ballots. They also indicated to us that they would be dropping off a kind of a boatload of voter registration forms for those individuals that are not eligible, that are not registered, to fill it out. What we need the public to do is to call your local board of elections in your jurisdictions and encourage them to ensure ballot access to those individuals that are behind the walls. You can get in touch with Out for Justice at getinfo@outforjustice.org. And our phone number is 443-563-2123. Did you have any additional information?
No, I just wanted to make sure that individuals know that, both individuals who are inside, who may be serving on felony convictions, although they don't have the capability or the right to vote in that current state, that there is still decisions that are happening around those individuals that may be important. So, like, as it relates to their sentencing and other laws that may affect them, just kind of check in with them and have conversations with them if you're able to see and around who they may think is important around that's going to vote for the issues that are related to them. And I also want to make sure that we, as elected officials, also as individuals who are working for the state in capacities of authority, such as parole officers and probation officers, to make sure that we are educating ourselves and that we are educating the individuals who are within our that report to us around the fact that folks can vote if they are formally incarcerated, or if they're serving on a misdemeanor conviction, that they are allowed to vote. So I just want to stress, last year we found out that there were some state individuals who worked for the state, who were in close proximity to formerly incarcerated individuals who did not know that that law had passed. So I just think that the awareness, and if you have the capability to have, voter registrations, and you need myself or Nicole to be able to stop by to educate or to engage individuals who are formerly incarcerated, please also reach out to us. That's all. Thank you.
And then we'll move on to League of Women Voters.
Okay, thank you. I am Ralph Watkins. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Maryland. We're a nonpartisan organization that for 100 years has been encouraging informed and active participation. We're probably best known for publishing the Voter's Guide before every election, which is available on our website, shown there. And the same information is at vote411.org. If I could see the next slide, we've got some considerations. So the most important thing is if you have moved since the last time you voted, you have got to update your address with the Board of Elections. Earlier, there was a question about when would people go on an inactive voters list. The most common reason is somebody moves and they don't tell the Board of Elections that they moved. So when mail is sent to them, it gets returned to the Board of Elections. The board tries to contact them, but if they cannot get a confirmation about where that person is, they're going to be on the inactive voters list. You don't want that to happen. Update your address. And you can do that in the State Board of Elections website directly, or you can go to their website and print out the form. And on the screen now, you can see in the upper left there, the State Board of Elections website. There's a blue banner that you use to navigate. Look for the voter registration button. When you click on that, you'll get the screen that you see in the lower left that gives you a number of options, including the fourth one there, updating your registration information. And when you click on that, you'll see the page on the upper right, the online voter registration system. That lets you do it all electronically online. The main thing you need to have handy is your Maryland driver's license, because that information is compared with the Motor Vehicle Administration, and you'll need that in hand when you fill that out. If you're not comfortable filling that out online, you can click on that second example there that says voter registration application. You can print out the paper one, fill it out, and get it in. As we've pointed out, May 27th is the deadline for voter registration. Don't take chances. Get your information updated as soon as you can. That way you'll avoid delays on election day or delay in getting your ballot. If you're ready to vote, then you're going to want information on the candidates. And so, yes, go ahead. Where can you find information on the candidates? And Christy from Represent Maryland is going to give us information on that.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ralph, and thank you to everyone who's joined the webinar tonight and to all the other presenters. Like Ralph said, my name is Christy Demnowitz, and I am the founder and chair of a nonpartisan group called Represent Maryland. And we work on some campaign finance reform and election reform initiatives, as you can see on the screen, like public election funds, ranked choice voting, independent redistricting, and special elections. And then tonight's webinar is a part of our work to increase voter education and engagement. Really quickly, we are a membership group, so if anyone's interested in learning more about what we do, please reach out to me at the contact info there. And next slide. So I'm going to talk really quickly about how you can learn about your candidates and what they stand for before you cast your vote, and I promise to keep it short because I know everybody's tired. Ralph and a few other people mentioned some free resources that are provided information about your candidates, and that there's also a paper version of that available that's in English and Spanish that can be given out to people as needed. So I think if you would like the paper version, you can contact the league to request it. So that's going to be issues-based things and the answers to their the candidates' answers to their surveys. And then there's also funding information that you can find. And for local and state elections, we have something called the Maryland CRIS system, or Campaign Reporting Information System, which is the website that candidates have to report their campaign donations and expenditures through, and it's available to the public to search. So that's only going to be available for state and local candidates, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more on the next slide. And then Represent Maryland has a program that we created. It's called the Small Money Commission, where we actually certify candidates who have met our small money criteria. And that means that they are not taking big money, which we think is important for politics in general. And that was established in 2018. So if you're interested in getting more information about that, please reach out to me or go to the website there. And it is a volunteer effort. So if you would like to help with that information, with doing that research to make that information public, please reach out to me. And then finally, for federal candidates, so this is going to be your congressional races this year and the presidential races. The number one resource is the FEC website, which is the Federal Elections Commission, fec.gov. And you can click on campaign finance data and then start searching for the candidates that are running in your districts to figure out who's funding their campaigns. And then there's also Open Secrets, which I hope a lot of people have heard about and have used. And that's a great resource to, again, figure out where people are getting their money from, and it breaks it down by industry and things like that. So if you want to go to the next slide. This is tiny little pictures that are really hard to read, but it's basically a flowchart of the Maryland CRIS system. And I included this because sometimes people see it and they don't know if they're in the right place. So I want you to know that you are in the right place. And once you go to the website, which is going to be shared in the chat, you can click on disclosures, and then you can search by either contributions, which are donations, or expenditures, which are payments made by the campaign out to different vendors and things. And then you'll search by the candidate's last name, because all of their campaign committees must have their last name included. Again, this is only for Maryland state and local candidates, and it is something that I think all voters should familiarize themselves with, and be aware that it exists and that they can look this information up if they want to. And if anybody chooses to use this and has questions about navigating it, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you walk through it, because it's not the best website in the world, but once you get used to it, it is pretty easy to use. And that's all I have to say. Please reach out to me if you have any questions about campaign finance reform, or using the CRIS system, or any of the other initiatives that I talked about in the first slide. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Sergio from ACLU Maryland.
Thanks, Christy, and thanks for all you do. So real quick, we can go to the next slide. Yep, with the ACLU of Maryland, I want to make sure that we get time to a few questions, so we're going to move past this to the next one. So on the left, you'll see a pretty cute sign of that says vote. That was actually an action that my wife, myself, and my 3-year-old, we all participated in last Saturday near DC, where we joined a bunch of folks in a car protest to help raise awareness about the need for our federal government to really step up to the challenge here and make sure that we are securing access to the ballot by not just by mail, but by any means across the country, particularly during the pandemic. There's no doubt that over the next few months, we need folks to get involved in that type of advocacy to make sure that we protect our access to the ballot. But I'll be honest, there's no doubt that perhaps just as importantly, if not more so, it's important that we actually vote. It's important that folks know how to vote. And that's why we were putting on this webinar today, to make sure that all of y'all here are, at this point, after hearing this several times, are basically becoming experts in this along with us, and that you're able to share this information with your neighbors and family. So you'll see, let me put it in the chat box right now. Great. So I just linked to this meme that's on the right side of the slide, and it's an image that our communications department at the ACLU put together. Let me post it again. That basically covers just the fundamentals of how to make sure that you vote, registering to vote, when you can vote by mail, and importantly, if you have any issues accessing the ballot, there's a phone number that you can contact and basically want to make sure that everyone who's online right now and tracking this webinar can share it on their page. So please copy and paste that on your social media page when you get a chance, so we can get the word out as quickly as possible now that ballots are starting to get mailed in. The next slide, it just basically covers how we're at the ACLU of Maryland, in partnership with the coalition here, we're working on broader election protection efforts. Every election, we have our legal team, an amazing set of volunteers across the state that are on call in each county to track any issues that we might be seeing with access to the ballot or at polling locations. Where this election is no different, and we want to make sure that we're there. But in order to do that, we actually need y'all's support. So again, the number that was on the meme that was shared is at the bottom there. It's 443-399-3229. That is live from now to June 2nd. You can call that at any time, and you will, depending on the hour, either be able to leave a voicemail or directly connect with one of our volunteers or members of our team. We are also looking for folks to sign up as local volunteers to help out as election protection volunteers. What that would mean is if it turns out that there might be an issue at a certain voting location in, say, Charles County or Prince George's, Baltimore City, wherever, we can contact y'all if you're interested in supporting us. We can contact y'all and let you know that we actually need someone to go over there and track to confirm that what the issue is, and then connect with our legal team so that we can respond as quickly as possible. So if you're interested in signing up as an election protection volunteer, you can simply send an email to myself. That's espana@aclu-md.org. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kobi Little, president of the NAACP of Baltimore City.
Thank you, Sergio. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the call. I want to thank Nicole for suggesting that we do this important webinar. And I want to thank the coalition for pulling together such a fantastic program. I just have four quick points. One, we need to encourage everyone to update their voter registration. If you're living in the 7th Congressional District and you didn't receive a ballot for the special election last month, please make sure that you contact the Board of Elections. If there are other people living in your household who didn't get a ballot, or if you have neighbors who didn't get ballot, please make sure that they also are registered to vote. The third thing is, if you haven't mailed your ballot by the Saturday before the election, I want to strongly encourage everyone to consider using the drop boxes, because we know that a large number of ballots were disqualified because they were received late. And so if you haven't mailed your ballot by the Saturday before the election, please consider using the drop box. And if you insist on mailing your ballot on Monday or election day, please make sure that you put your ballot in before the pickup time so that your ballot is guaranteed to be postmarked. Finally, just a quick word about getting out the vote, GOTV. It's all of our responsibility to make sure that we get a high turnout for the vote by mail election on June 2nd. Please use social media, please use texting, please use email, please pick up the phone and call people and get it on the grapevine that it's really important that people participate in the election. Thank you all for participating in this evening's webinar, and may you stay encouraged, hopeful, and healthy as we go through this pandemic. Q&A is next.
Great, thank you all so much. This is Danielle Lipinski again from Maryland LCV. I've been collecting questions throughout this, so thank you all so much for staying. Some of our panelists are available to stay a little later, so we'll stay on for a few moments to make sure we get all of your questions answered. So the first one that we received, that was a lot of folks asking, so how exactly is an active voter defined, and who makes that cutoff to get a mail-in ballot? And this is open to all the panelists.
Okay, a person gets moved to the inactive list if mail sent from the Board of Elections to that voter, could be their sample ballot, it could be some other notice from the Board of Elections, is returned to the Board of Elections as undeliverable. Almost always, it's because I've moved and I forgot to tell the Board of Elections my new address. So that the board will make several attempts to try to get to that voter, but all they've got to work with is your mailing address. So that's why it's important you keep your mailing address up to date with the Board of Elections.
And the Board of Elections confirmed for us that they won't move anyone to the inactive list 90 days within an election. So
right.
It's not like people should be getting moved to that right now.
Next question. I don't see them on my end. I don't.
Whoop, I am sorry, I muted myself. So the next question is, what are the prospects for full vote by mail in the general election?
Ooh. I mean, I can speak for Common Cause. Obviously, we and a number of organizations here have long supported passing a study. We want to make sure that Maryland's vote by mail system, once implemented, is done right. So I think what we're hoping to do is take a full look at the special election this June, Rockville's first use of their program as well. And I'm hoping that at this point, the General Assembly will move forward with the study. And I'm sure that we will see some other smaller bills aimed at improving the absentee process right now. I think we know that there are some things like our ballot style, making envelopes more easily identifiable when it comes in the mail, all changes that can be made over time, and that will help us move to a vote by mail system in the near future. And I do, from my understanding, I do think that there are municipalities that are interested in moving forward with these systems before the state does, which is fine. We'll be looking at best practices that were used in Rockville so that no voters disenfranchised at the local level either.
And I would add that it seems possible, if not probable, that we might be in the same situation for our November election. California just announced they'll be doing vote by mail for November, and I think Maryland is likely to make the decision in mid-June. So our groups will be weighing in on that. There are certainly ways we can get it right. And I would say long-term, all of our groups who support studying and potentially moving to vote by mail all do so with the caveat that there needs to be limited in-person voting for those who need it. And sometimes it's a hybrid approach because it's called universal vote by mail, but there are certainly still ways for people to vote in person to make sure everyone can participate.
Great, thank you. Next question is a two-part. With the signature space on the outside of the envelope, is that against anonymity? And if a person does not have black ink, only blue ink, does that invalidate their vote?
The signature on the envelope outside does not break your anonymity, because that envelope is, once they assure that this is an envelope from a registered voter, they've checked that, the envelope and the ballot are separated, and the ballot becomes totally anonymous after that point. So on the question of check with your Board of Elections, the main thing is do not use pencil. The question is about the color of ink. It needs to be dark enough so that the scanner will read it, but do not use pencil, because the graphite from pencils will flake off and clog up the scanners. So that's a problem. So not pencil.
Mm-hmm. Great. So the website says, this is a person who was asking, the website says that my ballot was sent, but I haven't received it. How long should they wait before downloading one online and not doing mail-in voting to make sure their vote is counted?
Can you repeat? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, can you repeat that? I'm so
I think we're recommending that folks wait till midweek next week, right? We know that the Board of Elections is mailing out the ballots in waves this week. We were hoping they'd all be out by now, but we don't believe they are.
Okay.
Full time. We've got 3 weeks before the election, but next week I think would be the right time to expect it to be in your mailbox.
I think the state is May 18th. If you wait till May 18th and it hasn't gotten to you, contact your local Board of Elections right away. And I can drop the link in the chat again.
Yeah, and you can ask, even if the ballot has been sent to you, you can ask for another one to be sent just in case it gets lost in the mail. That doesn't mean you can vote twice. They will check again to make sure that everybody's only voting once. But if you're concerned, you can ask for another ballot to be sent.
Great, thank you. So we got 3 more. In Baltimore, we have 7,000 evictions per year and others who move frequently. Lots of people won't receive their ballots in the mail. What efforts are being made to help these folks vote? Will we have the same early voting centers as we had in other elections for each jurisdiction?
There will be no early voting centers. That's the first thing. We have moved to all mail-in voting. The only voting centers are the ones that are on the list that will be open on election day. So the question about what can be done, people need to get in touch with the Board of Elections and update their address. You know, whether you moved 2 months ago, a year ago, last week, that's the main thing. You've got to, the voter, I can't go on the, I could not go on the Board of Elections website and turn in a change of address for somebody else. That would be fishy. So you yourself, the voter, have to confirm that you are changing the address. So that's why they want to see the address update from the voter.
Yeah, and I would just add, again, this is where getting the information out is critical. Unfortunately, with so much happening in the state right now, and people, you know, elections are an afterthought when you're trying to navigate the unemployment system, right? So it is understanding, one, that folks are dealing with a lot, but two, trying gradual ways to incorporate this information. I think a great example is when we're looking at Montgomery County, when we're looking at the food distribution areas, right? There's literature that is being added into the bags that they're receiving. So if you're assisting with stuff like that, incorporating that into the information that's being shared, I'd say send a short text to a friend with a link. Just be like, did you get your ballot yet? Do you know this? And so forth. But unfortunately, this is where, you know, everyone stepping up and calling on the state to do more to help us get out the vote is going to be key. And I'm hoping that after today, when we send you all the slides, you all will take it and host a virtual house party of your own, right? Invite your neighbors on to Zoom. We can provide Zoom if you need it, and, you know, ask them to come and you tell them how to vote, what they need to do, and so forth. It has to be that you leave tonight and you tell 10 other people in order to help bridge this divide, especially as people are being displaced.
I would also add only two things. One is that this is the reason why it's incredibly important that there is a on-site voting center option for people who have moved, who for whatever reason didn't receive their ballot, that they can go to the voting center, that they can vote in person, they can register to vote on site, even if it means provisional ballot. That is why that particular aspect is critical to an effective and robust mail-in voting system. I would also say that while I can't volunteer for my other panelists, that if people are interested in hosting other meetings for their community groups about vote by mail, I know I would, and I would help you in whatever way we can.
This next question is a good segue from that one. How do homeless people or domestic abuse folks in shelters vote?
Can you repeat that question?
How do homeless people or domestic abuse victims in shelters vote?
Go ahead, Ralph, and then I'll go after you.
Okay, you should, if you need to have your location protected, you can ask the Board of Elections to ensure that your residence location will not be released. There's a procedure for that because there are people who need protection. And for a homeless person, if there is any place you go regularly, whether it's a homeless shelter or a food bank or anything else, where you could
social service
that someone there will take the responsibility to get your ballot to you, so you can have it mailed to that place and you can pick it up there. That would be the thing to do. You do not lose your right to vote simply because you don't have a house.
Mm-hmm. And we're just encouraging folks who are homeless that typically you can use the your nearby social service address, and you just would need to continue to check in with them on a regular basis to ask them, have your ballot come back, or come there and just continue to check, continue to call the Board of Elections on a regular basis to say, you know, I've given this specific address. Do you know if this has been mailed out? Because not everybody has access to the internet to go check on the Maryland Board of Elections website to see if their bill has been mailed out. So they do have the 1-800 number as an option, which also extends to the population that we serve, individuals behind the walls. That 1-800 number gives them the ability to call the Board of Elections to let them know where they are and let them know that they need their ballot sent into the specific institution that they reside in at that moment. And so it's really important to have that 1-800 number available to our homeless population and our population of incarcerated citizens, so that they do not lose their access to their voting rights as well.
Great, thank you. So the second to last question that I have is, who is counting the votes? Who is eligible to oversee the counting of the votes?
League of Women Voters.
Okay. The board, your local Board of Elections is constituted as a board of canvassers. And when ballots are processed, there's always a Republican and a Democrat watching every step in the process. Because we use scannable ballots, all of your ballots will be scanned automatically. That is audited again by hand, the count is done correctly. And so that's how the counting is done. And the process of counting is going to be live streamed, so people can watch the process and see what is being done in your local Board of Elections.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if we, I think once we get to the canvas process, which I think starts as early as the 21st, I think the date was, we can send, I'll send around that link on the day it becomes available, just for people who are interested in taking a look at what that process looks like, with the understanding that, of course, because of the virus, there's social distancing and so forth, so there's a lot of change in the layout, but we can send around the links once they go live.
Great, thank you. One more question. How do we ensure that only American citizens are voting?
Repeat the question one more time.
The question is phrased, what is being done to ensure that only American citizens are voting?
Okay, so with that question, the reality is that only if you are a U.S. citizen, right, like you register and you can exercise the right to vote. The reality is that I'll say that there's this misconception that folks who are not U.S. citizens want to register to vote, which is actually, I'll say, not true, just because even if it's a crime and you actually will lose all privileges. Like if you are a green card holder and you end up in the rolls, you end up being registered, you would actually lose your green card and are subject to deportation just because you registered to vote. So the reality is that it's something that it doesn't. We actually did have looked into this, and it's something that doesn't really happen just because folks understand that it's a crime, and trust me, they do not want to register and then not being able to be here, right? Like be deported and certainly be in trouble. I think that answering more directly the question of what is being done, I think that right, like there is, when we're doing voter education, right? All doing voter education, I think the key here is obviously explaining who is eligible to vote, right? And who can vote. I think that I feel sort of very certain and very pretty confident that it's something that that I think in the immigrant community at large, it's understood. it is pretty well understood as we do voter education, but also as folks have gone through the process, right, they have led them to come here.
Yeah. And
I think the larger question, the bigger concern, not that I am, disregarding the individual's question, but the real question should be, how are we ensuring that those that are eligible are able to vote, right? How are we ensuring that with this new process, that all individuals who are eligible to vote has the education and is well informed about who to go to ask questions? Individuals in the demographic that I represent, thousands of individuals who are sitting in jail right now, pre-trial, stuck behind those walls, not yet convicted of anything. The presumption of innocence halos over their head. And they are the individuals who there is not enough conversation happening about how we ensure that they have ballot access, right? I know there's this conversation about making sure that non-citizens are not voting in our election, but we should be outraged about the fact that there are citizens, there are people in this country, in this state, who still have not received their ballots, who still have not registered to vote. And it is our duty to ensure that they have that access. So that is the important question, ensuring that everybody who is eligible should be able to cast their ballot, should be able to get registered to vote, should be able to be supported in voting. We have a large demographic of people who cannot read or write, yet they still know who should be representing them. They understand government. They know that they want great schools. They know they want a good government, and they need help voting. So that is the real question, as opposed to, making sure that people who aren't citizens not vote. We should be ensuring, we should be asking the most important question is ensuring that those individuals who are citizens, who are eligible, making sure that they have ballot access.
Great, thank you. We did get one more question, and it was about public service announcements. Let me go get it. Is anyone planning on doing public service announcements over the radio or in other ways to inform people of how to do vote by mail and the other options for this election cycle?
I guess I'll chime in. I think for at least a lot of the organizations on the line, obviously remembering that a lot of our orgs are funded based on membership and so forth. So we are actively working to get out the vote as much as we can. And we're calling on the governor, right, and state leaders to take advantage of PSAs, understanding that these are very expensive tools to use, right? And it's just not always possible around an election. But again, there may be groups that are able to do it, but I think for most, it is going to be, unfortunately, very grassroots efforts in terms of getting out the vote. We know that face-to-face, or I guess in this case, calls and text message and things like that work. It has to be direct one-on-one conversations, because a lot of times PSAs don't reach the people who are least likely to vote, right? So while PSAs work, they are effective to some degree. It doesn't reach the 2s and 3s where a lot of voter education, a lot of convincing, unfortunately, needs to happen.
I want to add something.
Yeah, I know. Out for Justice in the process of putting out a public service announcement along with Life After Release, also on TV and radio. So we're working with some radio jockeys to ensure that these attractive voices are on radio, educating the population to vote. Like you said, Joanna, we're participating in on the ground efforts. So we are stuffing envelopes. As of today, we stuffed over 200 envelopes, educating our members on making sure that they have access to the ballot and they know how to register, what numbers to call. And so those public service announcements are definitely on their way. I know Baltimore votes. I'm on the advisory board, and we have a representative on the line who is also pushing out public service announcements. But I think this election, that's going to really hit home with the intense phone banking and the mails. The mailers are going to be really, really important, mailing and calling out our fellow citizens.
And I want to add one more thing to that. I think that most of the other panelists would agree that the Board of Elections is not super well funded in Maryland. Maybe a nod if you agree. And that they don't have, the Board of Elections as the official entity does not have the funding to do official public service announcements through the state. So if you think that that's important, if you think that nonpartisan general voter information is important on when election deadlines are, where to vote, how to vote, and you think that the state should be facilitating that, contact your state delegates and senators and tell them that that should be a priority when they go back into session next year, that they should try to prioritize funding for the Board of Election, and that funding well-run elections is one of the most important things we can do in society. And I'd also want to flag that the League has a letter that they've asked the groups on this call to sign to send to try to get more funding for the Board of Elections. So this is a campaign that is kind of happening behind the scenes, but the more voters and the more member residents in the state of Maryland that contact their state officials and contact Governor Hogan and tell them to fund the Board of Election, the more successful we'll be.
And just one last flag, I know that we're well over time, because I know I talked about funding, but grassroots works, right? So take your phone, as you're voting or after you voted, say, hey, I'm Joanne, I live in Baltimore City, I just voted, and share the video, right? If you want, get a bunch of your friends to do the same, put it together on a clip and share it. I think people want to see average everyday folks who they know in their neighborhoods saying that they voted and that it was easy. So while seeing faces, leaders, and so forth doing it, it's easier for them because they're leaders, right? But when it's your neighbor who is saying, I did this, you can too, it works. So I think if anything, that is going to be the most effective way. So after you voted, take a picture, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, and tag 10 friends and tell them to do the same.
And I'm sorry, I just have to quickly add that also at this particular moment in which there are also all of these fears, and again, it's overwhelming to navigate all this. I know that in the immigrant community, it is really important to get these messages from trusted voices, which are also our friends and family. So we are really using word of mouth in our own networks through texting to also spread the word. But with that, there's this request wall to do the same, to reach out to your own networks, because I do think that the issue that we have in the immigrant community is one actually of convincing folks that, hey, no, you're eligible, go and register, this is how you do it, and this is how you can vote. That is really the need and the real issue that we face, and it starts with us, folks who already have those connections and are trusted, spreading the word. Thanks.
The only thing that I would add is that the panelists here all represent different nonprofit organizations with our interests, and we all know why we are working for voter access and public education, because elections have consequences. And so regardless of what your issue is, and regardless of what your interests are, know why, help people to understand why you are voting, and that elections are consequences, and the act of voting is the most fundamental part of our democracy, which is, I think, something that we can all get behind.
Do we have, I just want to flag one thing. There was a question in the chat about high school students registering to vote, and I don't think that was covered by anybody. Does anybody have the answer? Is it how old do they have to be
The
to
league
be able
does
to
a lot of,
register?
I think the question was, yeah, are people doing work? I know the league does a lot of work in Baltimore City, and Baltimore Votes does work to help high school students register to vote before
It
they
wasn't
turn 18.
it wasn't just who's doing the work. It was what's the age?
16.
16.
So
16, anyone can, you can register, pre-register to vote in Maryland so that you'll be on the rolls when you turn 18.
and then the other side was, can they vote in the primary if they'll be 18 in the general?
No.
Yes.
Yep, you just have to be 18 by November 3rd.
But they can vote in the primary this year if they're 17.
That's related to it, yes.
Okay.
Great. Well, I believe that that is all the questions from the chat. If you all have an extra 8 minutes, just going to make it around 9:30, we can open it up for the attendees to speak, if everyone's comfortable with that. Yeah, actually, you know what? Raise your hand if you have a question that we didn't answer, and I will give you speaking privileges. Okay, Barbara, I believe you're able to talk. Oop, Barbara, you're still on mute.
What?
Oh, there you go. What's your question, Barbara?
Oh, it was answered.
Oh, fantastic. Great. Well, thank you for attending. I'm going to mute you again and go on to the next person.
Okay.
Hi, Lillian. What is your question? Oop, I'm going to unmute you. Lillian, I believe you have to unmute yourself.
If she can, I think Dr. Lil had questions about outreach to the churches, if I'm correct.
That is correct. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. This was excellent and so informative. And as I sat and listened, I thought very much about, how can we get all of you all together somewhere remotely so that the churches, because we can't get together, but for the churches that may be interested in having the same kind of format. And also, I just lost the thought for my other question. But, I don't know if you all have any information about yard signs for Get Out the Vote. Is there anywhere we can, we're not seeing anything. And I think that would be important to put in our yards as well, anywhere.
Ms. Barbara, in Baltimore at 1400 East Federal Street, if you're interested in educating the felony community about their right to vote, we have yard signs at the Alfred Justice Office that you're more than welcome to come pick up Wednesday from 9 to 12.
Okay.
And our friends at MICA, the school for the arts, are putting together some Get Out the Vote materials that you can print out and put in your windows. They're not yard signs, but you could probably also tack it on one of your old yard signs. I know you have them in your basement, Dr. Lil. So we'll try to share those graphics with everyone who attended the webinar when they're available.
Great.
Yeah.
And now is the time to be creative. People can make their own signs. Unfortunately, COVID has shut down a lot of businesses, and so people in the sign business had to shut down their business. Now is the time that we're asking Maryland to get creative and make some signs. Put them in your window. Put them in on your car window. Let's just find ways to be creative in this election.
To address your question,
that's a good idea.
I think
well, just to address the question about your church groups, they, if you have the capacity to do one of these Zooms and take this information and share it out with them, I would try to start with that. And if you need help with putting it together or anything like that, you can, I volunteer that you can reach out to me to help with the tech side of it. Or Kristen, she waved. I know a number of us would be willing to help do that. But but the hardest part for any of us is finding people to attend. So if you have a built-in audience like that, you know, we definitely would like to share this information with as many people as possible. So just reach out to us and ask us, you know, as simple as picking a date, putting a Zoom together, promoting it, and then giving the info.
Yeah, I would just flag also, just to kind of wrap up the signs thing. I know that Cheryl just flagged that, again, while most of us are nonpartisan, pretty much all of us, you know, parties do have signs. So if you are affiliated with one of the 2 leading parties, you can go and grab a sign and so forth. We're also going to be having election protection signs that will be out. We'll find a way to include maybe a sticker on it that says June 2nd or so forth. But I think Danielle is flagging that might be our last question, if I'm correct. I'm not looking.
We do have one more question that just popped up. Oh, they are talking. Okay, 1 second, let me unmute you.
Hi, my question is, and I may have missed it in the discussion, it's a very informative discussion. Is there any local voter suppression organization that will be around for vote day to help people if they have a need?
I think that was, the ACLU does that. Sergio is not on right now, but the ACLU has a voter hotline.
I'm on. I'm just helping to put my kid to sleep. So yeah, so we have an election protection hotline that you can call at any time and leave a voicemail, or during the day we'll have someone from our legal team that respond. The number is 443-399-3229. Again, 443-399-3229. And so if that's a concern, please flag it for us. We have an extensive group of both our legal team and broader volunteers that would be happy to take it on.
I also flagged that we'll be leading election protection efforts on the ground as well. So we'll be covering all of the vote centers throughout the state. We'll have volunteers that are going by each of them 4 times throughout the day. We'll also have the voter protection signs outside of the vote centers as well. So if that is something you are interested in helping with, especially since it's 45 vote centers, so we will need a number of volunteers, please let us know. November will be similar, and it'll probably be volunteers outside of every polling location throughout the state. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out as md.commoncause.org.
And while we won't be able to do any protections behind the walls, what we're asking all of our Maryland citizens to do is just to, you know, have some compassion for individuals that are sitting in those jails, because it could very well be you. You can have a traffic violation and not know and not go to court and end up sitting in jail days before the election. So our way that we're asking you to provide some level of voter protection is to get in touch with your the local detention center and talk to the warden and ask the warden, what are you doing to ensure ballot access to the residents in that county who happen to be incarcerated right now? We're asking you to, wherever county you're in, Talbot County, Washington County, Prince George's County, get on the phone with that local detention center's warden and ask them to act and ask them to tell you what is their election protocol. How are they going to ensure ballot access for individuals who are sitting in jail pre-trial that have the right to vote? Because we don't have a law that, well, we had some policy that would have kind of forced the Board of Elections and corrections to work together. However, the law says that individuals that are sitting in jail pre-trial are eligible to vote. The law says that individuals who are sitting in jail on a misdemeanor conviction are eligible to vote. So we want you asking those wardens, what are they going to do to uphold Maryland's law?
Okay. So I think we are, if that is the last question, Danielle, I think we are going to wrap things up. I know that we have covered so much this evening, but I hope that the key things that you leave with today is to visit elections.maryland.org, check on your voter registration status. You can check on the status of your absentee ballot. And if you don't receive it by May 18th, contact your local Board of Elections. After today's webinar, we are going to send these slides to all of you, right? You all are available and open to use it freely to do trainings of your own. We'll also provide links to all of the information shared today, and contact information for all of the organizations. I shared the Everyone Votes Maryland Coalition Facebook page and Twitter on the chat. I'll drop it again. Please stay connected. It'll be a good place for you to stay updated on everything that's happening on the ground, as well as staying updated on when the website goes up and live. I hope that everyone, I hope that everyone feels like they're leaving tonight with all of the information that they need to safely vote, for you, all the info you need to share with friends and so forth. So thank you. And yeah, check your mail. If you're at home right now, check your stack of mail to see if your ballot happens to be in there. And I just included the pages online. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.